Hi, this is our Gossett Fellows presentation on the topic of communication for the Career Readiness Series. Today, we're going to talk about what communication is, types of communication, and how to communicate effectively.
My name is Isabella Bressler. I am a junior on the field hockey team, majoring in marketing and supply chain management with a minor in leadership studies.
Hi, my name is Emma Silverman. I'm on the women's gymnastics team here, and I'm majoring in psychology and minoring in human development.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Blumberg. I'm a senior on the men's soccer team, and I'm majoring in finance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jaden Ritter. I'm a junior on the women's track and field team, and I'm majoring in information systems.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Garvin. I'm a junior on the women's golf team. I'm majoring in business management and minoring in Spanish.
So first, I'm going to start by talking about NACE. So NACE stands for the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and it is the foundation to prepare college students to be career ready. According to NACE, there are 8 career ready competencies, and these include career and self-development, communication, critical thinking, equity and inclusion, leadership, professionalism, teamwork, and technology. It's important to note that not one competency is more important than another. And along with the competencies, NACE has listed sample behaviors so that students will know when they feel confident in that aspect.
Communication is one of the 8 competencies outlined on NACE's website. They define communication as clearly and effectively exchanging information, ideas, facts, and perspectives with persons inside and outside of an organization. With that definition, we can connect it to sample behaviors listed above. The sample behaviors start with having good verbal, written, and nonverbal body language, actively listening and persuading, and influencing others, being able to be clear and organized so that you are effective, framing communication with respect to diversity of learning styles, and how others vary in the way they communicate and understand cultural differences. Asking appropriate questions to specific people, such as supervisors, specialists, and others, and also being prompt when informing others with information that they need. More specifically, with cultural differences when communicating, it is important to not only understand a direct translation, but for meaning behind their words and what they're trying to get across to the audience. Another behavior I would like to emphasize is being able to ask the right questions and communicate with those around you. An example would be when talking to a supervisor, someone might address them by Mr., Mrs., and their last name, while with a colleague, they may be on a first name basis. Overall, this is saying that in order to appropriately communicate, you need to be able to read the room and the environment around you.
Next, I'm going to talk about email etiquette. Email is one of the most widely used modes of communication, particularly among professionals and in academics. As a result, it's critical to understand correct email etiquette when using this kind of communication. First and foremost, when you send an email, you are sending it directly to your main intended recipient, but you can also carbon copy, also known as CC, or blind carbon copy recipients, also known as BCC, which essentially allows you to send your email to additional recipients without directly addressing them. This is useful in situations where you may want to keep other people in the loop about a situation without sending them a separate email to address them directly. Next, you should always include an acceptable subject line when sending an email. The subject line should be brief and relevant to the email's content and goal. Because the sender is sending an email about setting up a monthly meeting in the example presented, the subject line of the email is titled Monthly Check-in. This informs the receiver of the email's content before they ever even open it. Third, before sending an email, make sure you include a suitable greeting at the beginning of your message. Greetings that are appropriate can be as simple as saying hello and the recipient's name. Next, rather than including your availability in the main body of the email, you should put it in the manner suggested in the example when sending an email that involves setting up a meeting time. This can lead to confusion, and the method demonstrated in the example is far more visually appealing. Finally, make sure you include a closing and an email signature at the end of your email. The email signature is essentially a stamp that you use to incorporate your name, title, and contact information in all of your emails. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Angela to talk about the communication platform Teamworks.
So I'm going to talk about Teamworks. Teamworks is an app that we as student athletes use a bunch in terms of communicating with those around us. I want to touch on what Bella mentioned earlier about promptly informing others when you need extra help and asking the right questions when you can to the right people. Teamworks is a great example of how we can do this as student athletes, since this platform allows us to speak directly to our coaches, our trainers, our academic advisors, anybody on the Maryland Made staff, so that we can keep them informed if we're struggling with something, if we need extra help. And it's really important to practice these good communication skills so that you can not be afraid to ask questions and just keep that line of communication open with everyone. This is a helpful platform for us as student athletes, but it's also teaching us great communication skills. I'm next going to pass it to Ryan to talk about organization and communication.
So looking at organization and communication, we've identified three key principles relating organization to communication. So the first one being clarity. So being organized in your day-to-day life will lead individuals to become more clear on what their goals, mission, and purpose is in life. Having clarity on these things will cause individuals to communicate more thoughtfully and impactfully when speaking to teammates, friends, or work colleagues. Secondly, structure. So increasing organization will improve our individuals structure their lives, as well as their thoughts, opinions, and arguments. Having a more structured life will lead individuals to become more efficient and productive with their time, while also having a positive effect on the way that they are perceived and viewed when communicating. So lastly, looking at leadership, organization and leadership are closely related to one another. Leaders who are viewed as being organized are able to increase their followership, power of influence, and credibility. This is because the opinions and messages that leaders try to convey when communicating will be taken on board better by others. So next, I'm going to speak about some additional resources about communication. So first, we'll look at podcasts. So one podcast that we've identified is called the Habits of Leadership podcast, which speaks about the power of communication in helping leaders and their teams to thrive professionally and personally. Another podcast we've identified is Craig Crochelle Leadership Podcast, which speaks of personal, practical coaching lessons, which provides powerful insights and easy to understand takeaways about communication as it relates to leading yourself and others. Next, we've identified a YouTube video, which is a TED Youth Talk called The Power of Communication, where Nina speaks of the importance of communication in the workplace and underlines the necessity of knowing how to communicate effectively in order to thrive in the working world. Lastly, we identified an article done by the Center of Creative Leadership called Why Communication is So Important for Leaders, which speaks of important factors about communication for leaders, tips to help leaders communicate more effectively, and the power of individuals' actions and attitudes as it relates to how leaders are perceived when communicating. Now I'll pass on to Isabella, who will speak about potential interview questions.
So I'm going to go over some potential interview questions we came up with regarding communication. Our first question was, how would you explain good and productive communication? So we said that you should make sure that what you are saying flows together and you're speaking with confidence, and make sure that the person can understand what you are saying and do not ramble on to make the explanation longer than it should be, and make sure you're clear and concise to the point and used in a proper time and manner. The second question we came up with was, how do you show communication skills while at work or on a team? And we said the number one thing for us would be, that's extremely important, would be listening to others, only sharing thoughts that are necessary. And we talked about how people think it's about what you say, but it's actually more about how you say it and the tone of your voice. And then make sure you share your individual thoughts.
I'll be talking next about some reflection questions for you guys after listening to this presentation about communication, and thought questions that you can ask yourself in order to better understand where you're at with your communication skills and how you can improve them. Our first question we came up with was, do you reflect your understanding through verbal and nonverbal actions? And what we mean by this is, when you're having a conversation with someone, are they able to tell your level of understanding through whether you're confirming that or just through your nonverbal actions, your body language? You need to be able to reflect whether you're understanding something or not. And again, not being able to ask questions if you're not understanding it, which is the second question. It's really important to clarify questions We've learned that even in an interview, if you're unclear about what the question is, there's nothing wrong with asking for clarification rather than not asking and answering incorrectly because you were afraid to ask. It's also important, as Bella mentioned, to be aware of your tone of voice when you're asking a question. You want to make sure that you're not sounding too aggressive or anything like that. Just be really aware of your tone. And do you actively listen while others are talking rather than planning what you want to say next? I think this is really important because a lot of times when we speak about communication, we forget that a part of communication is not only speaking, but also listening. So you want to make sure that when you're having a conversation with someone, you're actively listening. This will allow you to be more engaged, and it's just a way better way to communicate. Also, are you able to pay attention to other people's body language? This is important in, again, reading the room. You want to make sure that you can understand if people are engaged with you, if you need to direct the conversation a different way based on the body language. That's really important. And lastly, what I think is probably one of the most important reflection questions is, do you start conversations with an open mind, seeking to understand others' perspectives? This is really important in communication because when you start a conversation with someone, you want to make sure that you're there with an open mind, you're ready to learn, and you're not just there to get your points across. It should be a mix of both. So these reflection questions hopefully can help you to better your communication skills after listening to this presentation.
Okay, so for our closing comments, we want you all to remember that in order to communicate to the best of your ability, you need to incorporate all of the points we outlined earlier, starting with the NACE sample behaviors, following the email etiquette, and by looking at all the other resources we provided.
And yeah, we just wanted to say thanks again for taking the time to watch our presentation. And if you have any other questions or concerns, please feel free to contact us. Thank you.